Have you ever found yourself just sort of doing something almost on autopilot? A behavior you wish you could change, but it just happens.
Oh, absolutely. Like reaching for your phone first thing, maybe.
Exactly. Or that late night snack you didn't really plan on. It feels so automatic, doesn't it? So ingrained.
It does. And we often feel kind of stuck with these habits, like they're just part of who we are.
But here's the hopeful part, the thing that really jumps out. Those patterns aren't actually set in stone.
That's right. They feel permanent, and yeah, they're deeply wired for efficiency, but they are absolutely changeable. That's really the core message Charles Duhigg gets across.
Not set in stone. I like that. So if we can change them, what's the mechanism? What did Duhigg uncover in his book, The Power of Habit?
Well, welcome everyone to the deep dive.
Yes, welcome. Today we're really digging into those behaviors, those habits, using Duhigg's work as our guide.
Yeah, our plan today is basically to unpack the science of how habits actually form and, how they work.
And not just for us as individuals, right?
No, exactly. We'll look at how they shape entire companies, organizations, even whole societies. It goes way beyond just, biting your nails.
And the key thing for you listening is we want to give you some practical takeaways, real insights from Duhigg that you can actually use to understand your own habits and maybe even start to reshape them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So where do we start with unpacking these things?
Well, Duhigg gives us this core concept right up front, the habit loop.
Ah, yes, the loop. It's not just simple cause and effect, is it? It's more like a cycle.
Exactly, a self-reinforcing cycle. And it basically explains almost all our behaviors, whether we realize it or not.
And it has those three parts.
Right. First up is the cue.
The trigger.
Yeah, the trigger. That little signal to your brain that says, okay, time to run that program. Could be anything, a time of day, a place.
An emotion even. Or seeing certain people.
Totally. Then comes the routine.
Which is the behavior itself.
Mm-hmm.
The action you take. That's what we usually think of as the habit.
But it's only part two.
Right, because the third part is crucial. The reward.
The payoff. The benefit, the satisfaction, whatever it is that makes your brain go, ooh, nice, let's remember this.
And that reward, that's what reinforces the whole loop. It kind of burns the pathway into your brain, makes it automatic.
Like building a neural highway, yeah.
And once that highway's built, our brains love it. Because, brains are all about efficiency.
Saving energy.
Exactly. So these habits get stored deep down in the basal ganglia, and they become almost subconscious.
Which is why just deciding to stop often doesn't work. You need a strategy, right? You have to consciously rewrite it.
Precisely. You can't just hit delete.
So how do you change them? This is where Duhigg introduces the golden rule of habit change. And it's kind of counterintuitive.
It really is. Because the rule says you can't actually eliminate a bad habit, that neural pathway. It's still there.
You can't just erase it.
No. But what you can do, and this is the key, you keep the cue, you keep the reward.
The start and the end stay the same.
Right. But you consciously swap out the middle part. You replace the old routine with a new one that gives you a similar reward.
Ah, so you're hijacking the existing loop.
You got it. You're building a new road, but it leads to the same desired feeling or outcome.
The book has that amazing story about the woman who quit smoking. That illustrates this perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
She didn't just, grit her teeth. She figured out her cues. Maybe it was stress, maybe boredom.
Okay.
And she figured out the reward she was really craving, maybe comfort or just a break.
And then?
Then she consciously chose new routines.
Yeah.
Maybe a quick walk or chewing gum or calling a friend, something else that addressed that same need, that same cue, and delivered a similar feeling of relief or reward.
And by changing just that one habit, her whole life started to shift.
Exactly. It shows how powerful that focused approach can be.
Yeah.
It wasn't about changing everything at once.
And that leads us to the next point, right? That
Yeah.
these loops aren't just personal. They scale up.
Massively. Duhigg shows how organizations, companies, use these same principles, sometimes consciously, sometimes not.
Yeah, like how they build company culture or improve performance. The Starbucks example is fascinating.
It really is. They train their baristas with these specific routines, almost like little scripts, for handling stressful situations.
Like when there's a long line or a difficult customer.
Exactly. So instead of the employee having to think on their feet and maybe get flustered,
They just run the routine.
they run the routine. It's a pre-planned response. It makes things smoother, less stressful for everyone, and keeps the service consistent. It's all about ingrained habits.
Wow. And then there's the Alcoa story, the aluminum company.
Oh, that one's incredible.
Mhm.
Paul O'Neill, the CEO, takes over this company with a terrible safety record. And his first priority, not profits.
Safety, which must have seemed strange.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But he made worker safety the absolute #1 habit everyone had to focus on.
So how did focusing on just safety change everything else?
Well, think about it. To improve safety, you had to improve communication. You needed better data. You had to look closely at manufacturing processes.
So fixing the safety habit forced improvements everywhere else.
Exactly. It was a keystone. Improving safety meant improving communication, accountability, efficiency, everything.
Hmm.
Profits soared, but almost as a side effect of building that core safety habit.
That's powerful. And it's not just companies. Duhigg talks about society too, right? Social movement.
Yeah, like the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yeah.
He analyzes how it gained momentum through these sort of collective habits.
It wasn't just one person deciding not to ride the bus.
No, it was a community shifting its routines together,
Yeah.
finding new ways to get around walking, carpooling. That shared commitment, that repeated action became a powerful social habit that drove huge change.
And of course, marketers know all about habits.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding our ingrained routines is like gold dust for them. The Febreze story is classic.
Right. It was originally supposed to just eliminate bad smells.
Yeah, but it flopped initially because people actually get used to the smells in their own homes. They go nose blind. So there's no cue to use it.
The habit loop wasn't there.
Exactly. But then the marketers noticed something interesting. People weren't using it to eliminate odors they didn't notice. They were using it at the end of their cleaning routine.
As a finishing touch.
Precisely. Like spraying it on a freshly made bed or a clean carpet. The cleaning itself was the cue, and the Febreze spray became the reward, that little burst of fresh scent that signaled, job done, smells great.
So they changed the marketing to fit the existing cleaning habit.
And boom, billion-dollar product. They didn't change the habit. They tapped into one that was already there and added a new reward.
That's fascinating. It all comes back to understanding the loop.
Which brings us to another really key concept from the book. Keystone habits.
Okay, keystone habits, what are those exactly?
They're basically small changes, small habits that seem kind of minor on their own.
But they kick off a chain reaction.
That's exactly it. A ripple effect across lots of different areas of your life, even ones that seem totally unrelated.
Like a domino effect?
Yeah, pretty much. Duhigg uses exercise as a great example.
Okay. How does exercise work as a keystone habit?
Well, think about it. When people start exercising regularly, even just a little bit, other things often start to change too, without them necessarily planning it.
Like what?
They often start sleeping better. They might start eating healthier because, they feel like fueling their body properly.
Makes sense.
They often report better focus at work, maybe more patience with colleagues or family. Their confidence goes up.
Wow. So that one habit exercise triggers all these other positive changes.
Exactly. It creates momentum. It shows that our habits aren't really isolated silos. They're interconnected. Changing one can cascade through the system.
That's a really empowering idea. Find one keystone and it can unlock a lot.
Definitely. But Duhigg adds another really important layer to all this. It's not just about the mechanics of the loop or finding keystones.
What else is there?
Belief.
Belief. Belief that you can actually change.
Yes. He argues that true, lasting transformation, whether it's personal, like quitting smoking, or organizational, like Alcoa, requires a fundamental belief that change is possible.
Why is belief so critical?
Because changing habits is hard. The old pathways are strong. You need that belief to keep going when it gets uncomfortable, when you slip up. It's this psychological fuel.
And where does that belief come from?
Often, Duhigg notes, it comes from community, from being part of a group where other people are changing or where there's shared support and accountability. Think support groups or even just, friends working on goals together.
Or faith, he mentions too.
Or faith, yeah. Something bigger than yourself that reinforces the idea that change isn't just possible, it's expected. It strengthens that inner conviction.
Reading this, I couldn't help but think about my own habits, like my snacking habit.
The snack-a-deck. What do you figure out using the loop?
Well, I realized the cue wasn't usually hunger. It was often boredom or maybe a bit of stress, just feeling restless at my desk.
Okay, cue identified. Boredom stress. What was the routine?
Routine was definitely heading to the kitchen, grabbing chips, cookies, whatever was easy. Junk food, basically.
Have the reward.
Instant distraction. A little hit of, sugar-fueled relief or just something to do. A brief escape from the boredom.
So applying the golden rule, What did you try changing?
I tried to keep the cue. I
Yeah.
mean, boredom still happens, right? And I still needed that reward, that mental break. So I focused on the routine.
Swapping it out.
Yeah. Instead of heading for the snacks, I tried making myself journal for 5 minutes or just getting up and walking around for a bit, something different to break the pattern.
And did it work?
It took time. It wasn't like a magic switch. Sometimes the old habit definitely won. But understanding the loop, understanding why I was doing it, and consciously trying to insert that new routine,
Hmm.
it definitely helped shift things over time. The book gave me the framework.
That's a perfect example of how practical this stuff is. It's not just abstract theory. Duhigg makes this complex science really accessible,
Totally. The tools, the insights, the stories, they really stick with you.
which is why The Power of Habit is such a valuable read. It demystifies something fundamental about being human.
Absolutely. I mean, it's grounded in solid research, packed with these memorable examples. For me, it's easily a 9 out of 10.
I'd agree. It's just so well put together. If you're into self-improvement or productivity, or you just feel kind of stuck,
Or even if you're just curious about why we do the things we do.
yeah, it's a must-read. It shows you habits aren't just about, flossing. They shape companies, marketing, social change, everything.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to chew on, maybe apply to your own life.
Thinking about that cue routine reward loop.
Yeah. How might understanding that loop help you spot just one small habit in your life? Maybe a potential keystone habit
Right.
if you just tweaked the routine.
Could start ripple effect. Create some real positive change.
Exactly. Just one small tweak. What could it be? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.